Chairman, for including me on the agenda. Delighted to be here. Just in case anybody's stressing out about me being up here, we will not be talking about BRT or answering any BRT questions. Well, so much that I would share with you. Let me kind of rifle through some things, and then hopefully we'll have just a minute for questions. We'll see how long that takes. I was really interested in the discussion about the signs. Let me go back in time a little bit to where those initial signs showed up. We were right in the middle of our branding process. I was fairly new mayor, and all of a sudden I found out that parallel to our branding efforts, these signs were actually being designed and produced. So we made some really last-minute changes to them to make them fit into our branding and got those signs up. And I really like them. I would extend a careful invitation for you to talk about, is this something that you would like broader, and do we want to go outside of the CDBG dollars to make this something you do in your city? And so,
you do.
Okay.
What cost is involved per sign, roughly?
It's around $5,000.
Yeah.
$5,000 per sign.
3,500.
So, I don't know, should we do a really official vote here? Or is that,
how long does this last?
well, because of their nature of the expense, they're very good signs.
Right, so this is like a one-time,
Yeah.
for 20
So,
years. So
now let me just say, I have no funding source. I'm just interested in the interest, and if this is something that you'd like to see, Mike, and all of a sudden we're going to lose my whole time to signs, and that wasn't my intent. Just real quickly.
I just want to say, given what Hal said when we started the meeting about this refocus they're doing on the neighborhood program, I think it's probably best to table that, because he mentioned that we might change from 35 to some other number of neighborhoods. And rather than spend the money now, if we're going to go through that process, it probably makes sense to have this discussion after that's finalized.
Quick one, because I'm not giving my 30 minutes to sign.
Okay. Assuming it stays the same, we are generally not well known. People don't know and understand that they live in a particular neighborhood. So for that reason, I think it's good.
I'm going to bet my neighbors don't know. So I'm going to take this as something we should look into. You good with that? Yeah. We probably would not outpace the audit with this anyway. So great, that's good feedback. Also, I was really interested in the Red Cross discussion, and it made me think of something I should share with you. And that is, a number of months ago, Chris Kissinger applied for a grant and received a grant that will actually pay for 70 people, mostly from Provo, but also our adjoining cities, to go back to Emmitsburg in June and take a week-long emergency disaster training course. And among other things, it will, we're taking neighboring cities, Orm's going with us, Springville's going with us. It will help us realize our holes and learn how to work together as a team. We met this week and decided that we're going to start treating our mini disasters like disasters from a response standpoint. Let me tell you what I mean by that. When we have an emergency, we form what's called an EOC and come together as city leadership. And we haven't really done that, and waiting for the big disaster, right? So we kind of said, well, we're going to come together on these little disasters and put that together so that when the big one comes, we're ready to go. One of the huge holes that we have is our EOC location. It is the police department. Now think about this. This building is not 40 years old and not prepared for earthquakes. So our EOC location is in a building that would not survive an earthquake. And of all the great things we do in the city, this one worries me. It haunts me a little bit that we're not quite ready. So hopefully this trip out to Emmitsburg will generate some further preparedness, and I feel good about that. Downtown. Wow, should we just enjoy downtown for a moment? Let's rifle through some things that are happening downtown. In this building, this city center, it had its 40th anniversary last year, and it's tired. Not only is it tired, it's not well planned. Those of us that lived through the 70s, some of you were smiling, know that in the 70s it was not about efficiency. This building sprawls out. If I want to talk to one of my directors, it's either a 5 or longer walk from me to them, or from them to me. It was a building there when women weren't in the workforce. It was built in an era when we had, I'm just going to guess, probably 40 police officers and 100. And so you can see there's a lot of strain and pressure on this building. In addition, it occupies perhaps, if not the most valuable, close to the most valuable block in the entire city, and is used very inefficiently. So we are embarking on a process right now. We've hired a consultant to come in and analyze this lot and see what we could do with it. There's a chance, and I'm careful with this, that we could actually hold the developer, redevelop this lot, build a new city center, and have it revenue neutral to our taxpayers. Cool. So that's what we're angling for. If we start doing things like, well, we really need a separate public safety building, that then probably takes us out of that category and not even bothering to do it. And so we're going through that process right now in the city. We've got a stakeholder group together. We've got this consultant coming in. A lot of really good things could come from it. One would be city efficiency, and another would be better use of this block in the downtown area. Okay, the tempo. Isn't that amazing? I keep hearing the end of 2015. And I talked with a foreman on site the other day, and he said they haven't nailed us down to a specific date, and they're holding to it in 2015. They keep looking at that building and a lot of work to do. But in many respects, much of the work they have done doesn't really show from a finished building standpoint. So people start seeing the R.C. Willey law. Recently, it was announced that R.C. Willey would be combining their outlet center here at Provo and their store up in Orange in one location of the new Orange Mall, which means that we'll be losing R.C. Willey. We feel bad about that. I don't know about you, I'd love to shop there. If you like it, though, that place is just blessed to shop. And they will be leaving. And that actually, although we love them there and they brought some good revenue into our area, it's not all bad because there was some very strong positive pressure to redevelop that block. We have some developers who have been counting hardware down wanting to redevelop that block. And likely R.C. Willey leaving will precipitate that. It was kind of one of the reasons that we were holding back on that. And likely what you'll see there is high density, multi-story, multi-use type of facility there. We talked to Smiths. I actually have we were being broadcast, so I'll be a little bit coy. There's potential that I'm meeting with Smiths on Monday to discuss Smiths' presence in the city. Was that for quiet? It was very quiet, wasn't it? We would love to get them to think outside the box about that Smiths next to that building and redevelop with us. And so far, there's not been a lot of interest in that, but there could be some exciting things there. Likewise, for those of you west of the freeway, we continue to meet with Smiths on their empty lot here on Center Street. And we'd love to see some movement there. And there have been some, I would say, positive conversations, not necessarily for a full, all-out store, but some potential to get something going with that location.
Does the city own that R.C. Willey?
The block, yes. Well, we own the block and part of the Smiths parking lot. And Smiths owns part of the parking lot in the Smiths buildings. And the part of the parking lot we own is under lease for many, many years today.
The time frame on the R.C. Willey move?
I don't have an exact date. It coincides with everything that's happening at the mall, so I suspect it's still some time.
They're looking at November of this year.
Okay, and that would include quicker than I would guess.
Okay, within the year, probably.
So one of the fun and exciting things that's very new, in a sense, to downtown is actually residential units in our downtown area. And many of us for years have been longing for people to live downtown and feeling like that was an essential building block to the vibrancy of our downtown. And that's the people who live here. I'm really pleased that you'll see the Justice Court, which is moving, by the way, if you didn't know, it's moved over to East Bay. Will be about a 2-week transition where people will be paying tickets downstairs on a temporary basis and then we'll go to the Justice Court. That building's coming down, and a great company that we really like called Cowboy Partners is building about and changes about 140 apartments right across the street from the city center. They'll be very moderately priced. Some of them will actually be subsidized, and that will bring some fun bodies into downtown.
Will that take the other businesses out also?
Only the thank you. They're not involved in this. That's about half the block. The city owns the other half of the block, so it's roughly half the block. That will happen on. It's a beautiful design too. You haven't seen it. It really will be a nice addition to the downtown. Then right across from the county building, we call that 63 East. You've probably seen that's under construction. That'll actually be 44 high-end apartments that are going in there. And we continue to get people very interested in living accommodations downtown. We really think that'll help our downtown.
What's happening down on the tracks? I know it's the old ferry mill lot and some of that stuff.
So really, great point. Our TOD, we call it right there by the Front Runner Station, we knew when it was announced that Front Runner would build the station there, that would attract an urban living type of a lifestyle. There's already one underway right down there. That's probably what you're seeing. The stock building, where that stock building supply is currently leased to our Provo Power Department. They have not renewed the lease because of their intentions to develop that spot right there with high density housing as well. And we really hope and anticipate and expect that you'll have similar of a row of high density from the Front Runner Station into our downtown.
Well, we talked about that years ago in that vision.
Exactly. Now it's coming together. It's really very exciting. Okay, I'm going to keep going fast. So there was a little conversation earlier this morning with Brian Jones about Google. So let me launch into Google and tell you, Ben, your ears perking up are probably justified. And let me tell you kind of the fine line the city is walking here with Google. We believe, most importantly, that it is in our best interest of our residents to have connectivity, low prices, and high speeds. And we promote as a city anything or any vendor who brings that to our residents. And be a Comcast, and I've actually talked with Comcast, and I said, get in this game, come tell me what you'll offer, and I'll promote it. Because I want my residents to have those things. And that's one of the reasons we're comfortable promoting Google, is we'll promote anybody who will come offer high speed, low price, and connectivity to our residents. That's the game. And in addition to that, another thing that layers on that helps the city feel comfortable about this is the city spent no small amount of effort and no small amount of money to bring the Google situation into Provo. And so while it's not city sponsored, it is a city-led initiative to bring them into Provo. So quickly on this, we will contact you as neighborhood chairs. You have no obligation to assist them. I would follow that guideline of, is this good for my neighborhood? We're going to share it with them. And use that as your guideline. The same way you would a Comcast project. I think that's a really good analogy.
Wednesday at 6:30 at Amelia Earhart, we're having a neighborhood meeting, and Google will be there to make a presentation.
Perfect. Let me tell you why this is so critical and why the city is mobilizing to support this. We have the opportunity to be the only city in the world with essentially all of our residents connected to the internet, and to do that even better with free service. How does that change the game for Provo? Just for bragging rights alone, that changes the game. But what it does for education is remarkable. We've had some great conversations with our school district, and the opportunities that means to have every child have internet into their homes is huge. Yes.
And along with that, my question would be, what about families who are possibly don't even feel like they can afford the $30 connection fee? Is there a way,
if I forget that before I finish,
Okay.
then I need to come back to that. Second thing is simply from an economic related standpoint. What this does for us is just fabulous. Both on the high speed and the freedom of both of those are important to the business. When we negotiated the deal, we were only able to get the $30 for our residents on the first pass. In Kansas City, in Austin, it is $300 per household. In Orem, it is $3,000 for that hookup if you are a Utopia customer. Okay, $30. Only in Provo, only city in the world, not Austin and not Kansas, just Provo is $30 just the first time through. That is the urgency. Google is under no contractual obligation to offer that $30 if they come back to the neighborhood again. So they come to the neighborhood, they give you a date, they're serious about it because then they move to the next neighborhood, and the next neighborhood, and the next neighborhood. That's why we're engaging you. You don't need to represent Google, but what we hope you will do is make sure people are educated about the decision. We want them to make the decision. We don't want to make the decision for them. But if Mrs. Jones is 86 years old, I think about my parents, and somebody knocks on their door and says, I could hook up your home for $30, my parents are going to say, oh, that's fine, thank you. We don't use the internet. And they're right, they don't. I gave up years ago. But if they sell that home, right now on the MLS in Utah County, there's a box for fiber. It will impact property value. Okay? If their son or daughter or grandson or daughter move in with them to go to BYU, they will want internet. And so there's tons of reasons for $30. Let me also say, I hear a lot of people say, I've got Comcast, I'm under contract with Comcast for 2 years. My suggestion is pay the $30, get the installation, and then you can do whatever you want after that, because it's free, right? Get it into the home, get it wired for it. I tell you what you get for that $30. They come in, they do that. If the city does that hookup, it's about $1,000. When we used to own it, what they're charging $30 for, and Orm's charging $3,000 for. It costs the city about $1,000, our cost to do that. So they come in and bring the wire into your home. They hook up a wireless router, and you get wireless internet in your home. 5 megs, and if you're not into megs, I wasn't either a couple years ago. That's adequate. It's not super, it's adequate. You can stream Netflix, you can send emails and attachments and things like that with it. So 5 down and 1 up, and you get that at no cost in your home. So think about this for a minute. If you have Comcast, and you want that to be your visitors network when they come, run them both. If you don't want to use it because it's confusing, have it put in there and turn it off. And then you have the ability at any time when you have that in home, and it will impact your property values. That's why we're engaging you, because we want people, when they knock on Mrs. Smith's door, to make a good decision. If they say no, I'm okay with that. That's fine. But we just want them to say no, having that information and knowing what's at stake.
Do you have any advice for renters whose landlords aren't on top of this?
So one of the models about Google that we wish was different is it's owner-based, not the tenant-based. And so the only suggestion I have is put pressure on that landlord and demand. I mean, why not? Offer to pay the $30 for the landlord. That's the deal. Now, to your question, I've been aware from the beginning that would be tragic if we had this opportunity and we legitimately had residents who couldn't afford the $30. So I've been watching it very closely. I went out and actually solicited a $5,000 donation from a very generous member of our community, and I have that in my back pocket symbolically. And Google knows I have it. They just did their first neighborhood, and I asked them last night, was there anybody who said that? And there wasn't in that case.
But Mrs. Smith, when you knock on her door, isn't going to say to the kid, because I can't afford it, she's just going to say goodbye. Right.
So we have some resources, and what I need to know is what the needs are. So that would be another thing you could share with me. If there are, I got a check, I can disperse it. We have to figure out how to disperse it and all those things. Bill Holderstrom with United Way has told me he would be willing to be the agency that we run it through. And so kind of got, I'd say 75% of this worked out. But I don't want anybody to pass on this because of the $30. The gentleman that gave me the check, I think he gave me the check because he was 30 minutes late for the payment. He didn't really agree with the concept that no one can afford it. And his comment to me was, come on, how important is it to them? And one of the reasons Google's charging $30 when we negotiate this whole thing is they feel like if you don't pay the $30, you don't appreciate it, and you don't show up for your install. And that's one of the reasons I'm holding back a little bit too. And so I'm really looking for the really serious people who can afford it.
Time frame is, what's the cutoff date that we have to sign up?
I didn't bring it with me. If on the Google website, it lists all of the neighborhoods.
You said they just did their first neighborhood.
That was North Park.
Do you mean when they cut off veracity?
No, I mean like when you have to sign up for the $30 deal.
Yeah. So if you get on their website.
Franklin neighborhood, it's the end of this month.
Yeah.
Really?
In ours too.
Yeah, you have to look 28th in the Franklin neighborhood.
But you can schedule in March.
Yes, you can sign up right now. So
we need to get the word out quickly, is what you're saying.
Go to Google Fiber, type in Provo, there's a little box, and it'll give you all the neighborhoods, the boundaries. They kind of mirrored our neighborhood boundaries, but there's 7 of them, so you can be able to lump them in together.
So you talked about the digital divide, how important it is for education and all of that. I have a mobile home trailer park in my neighborhood, so don't qualify for CDBG, but I still have this area, and they are not eligible. High income mobile home park. They're not eligible. They're not eligible for Google Fiber. Google has told me that. I talked with Devin Bear about it, and he said they're discussing it.
So and I'll try to go quick. I'm sorry, Matt.
Wow.
And I'm not the third thing on my list. But this is important, right? It's very important for us. So 2 things. I've had a number of people reach out to me and say, when I contacted Google, they told me I was not eligible. 100% of those, probably not in this situation, but 100% of those were eligible and they got that information. So if any of your neighbors, and these were cases where this neighbor had it, and this one they're not eligible. Those are clearly mistakes. And just tell them to push back. And if they push back and it doesn't work, then get us involved. Those are clear mistakes. Now we do have some very few areas of our city that we didn't run the fiber in front of. And if, I don't know if this is, but if this is that case, Google is not obligated to do that. We have told Google that we will, on a case-by-case basis, decide if the city should pay for that. And so if that's really the case, let's put the information in. We'll make a decision about can the city afford to do that in those connections. I will tell you this quickly, is that I've had some really fun, exciting conversations with Google and Provo School District. Some really fun ones. And Google has invested in I learned that there's really several things that are important for literacy for school kids. Getting the internet is only one. The device is 2, and we have these devices 3. Google has engaged big time with their school district and with the Franklin Community Center in accomplishing all 3 of those things on a volunteer basis. They've hired interns that they review and teach. It's really very exciting. Okay, anything else on Google? Rec Center, let me just say, holy cow. Single biggest day of the whole time the rec center was open was Monday, a holiday. I don't know if anybody were there. Gary was there. I can't remember the numbers. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. I do know that they signed $10,000 of new members on that day. Matt?
3,000. I think they had 3,000 guest passes sold. 2,300 membership swipes in one day.
It's just fantastic. It's just, I was there last night and they were running a program for people with disabilities and initiating programs that were never been able to initiate under the old system. So home run, I think we've talked so much about improving neighborhoods. I think it's just one whack. It's a huge thing for all our neighborhoods, especially those in close proximity to the recreation center. Emails, in reference to discussion about emails, the city does have a newsletter email list. It's getting close to about 25,000 things. I don't have any ability to break it up and tell you which ones are yours, but we do send out emails about once or twice a month. But what I would encourage you is, if you're interested in one of your communications with your neighborhoods, give them a link. It's on our website. If you can't find it, let us know. To say, are you interested in the city website? If you are, in the city newsletter, coming electronically, if you are, here's the link so that they can sign up.
Could we do the opposite thing, where we have a thing on your city newsletter to say, if you are in this neighborhood, email this person to get on your specific list?
Great idea. And I hate when I tell this to people, but I always tell them, would you email me that? Because the reason I say that is I'm standing here, by the time I'm back in my seat, I will have forgotten. Well, I think that's a fabulous idea. Yeah, to go reverse to get more people on the email list. We talked briefly about your meetings. I don't ever want you to infer or feel like I'm going into your neighborhoods where I'm not invited and not part of what you do. It just happens. And so you're always welcome to be part of that, and contact me, and vice versa. Please invite me to your meetings, even without anything specific on your agenda. I love to attend, but I'll come sit in the back and answer questions. It also lets me hear what's on people's minds from your perspective.
Next Wednesday at 6:30.
Would you email me that? and if I'm available, then I would love to go. The last thing I'll touch on quickly is a couple of comments about sidewalks. And let me just mention that the Transportation Utility Fund that was worked on so hard by your council, and just a fabulous the display of cooperation and good things happening with the residents, administration, and the council. One of the things we didn't talk about a lot was that frees up $500,000 annually for sidewalks. This is significant because the city has never had funding source for sidewalks other than the CDBG dollars. So those neighborhoods who were eligible had a shot, right, at getting some sidewalk improvements. And when they did, it absorbed the CDBG dollars that could have been used for something else. This is the first time we actually have a funding source. The next steps for the administration to come to council and say, this is how we want to administer this funding source. The number of $500,000 was picked roughly because we said, what would it take to go all the way through the city and replace all our sidewalks over a 40-year period of time? And it's about $500,000 a year. But we've never had them. Some of these neighborhoods, tree streets and things like that, these sidewalks are dilapidated. And that traditionally is the responsibility of the homeowner. But when we put that burden on the homeowner, rarely do we get good sidewalks, right?
What about neighbors that don't have sidewalks? Could that funding be used?
Absolutely,
possibly?
yes. And so that's that's now the hard thing. I mean, it was hard to get the funding. Now the hard thing is, oh my gosh, where do we start?
Right.
And I would start bubbling those things up. And I think priority problem's got to go, right, where we don't have sidewalks.
I might fix the really bad ones first, because half my neighborhood, they don't want it.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, some people, you're right. Brett knows how hard we can sidewalk.
Yeah, so we used to do special improvement districts for places that didn't have any more sites.
So one of the thoughts, Dave brings up a good point, if the burden for the sidewalks is on the homeowner, maybe a way to make this money go a lot further is to say, those neighborhoods that all need to step up and do some work.
I'm doing good.
And perhaps some dollars could possibly move up in priority, and thus our dollars could go a lot further.
Can the homeowner get any kind of tax credit or anything like that for repairing sidewalks?
So how do you apply to have a sidewalk done?
Wait for us to get a program together. We just barely got the fund passed in a month or two ago now. And City Council, I don't know if you know this, yesterday's mail came just a large check from one of our partners. I'll just say that. So you guys are awesome. Thanks for all the work you do. Thanks for giving me a few minutes today. Pam, as I'm walking away.
Does your family know who you are anymore?